Hello, world. How are you doing? Yeah? Yeah, that's what I thought. So I know I kind of dropped off. I didn't do my tarot readings this month for the collective signs. And there's a very obvious reason for that. My midheaven's in Aries, and I just felt the call to action. After George Floyd's death, a lot of us felt the call to action. And I think it's important to recognize that what is happening right now is not actually because of George Floyd. George Floyd was the final, not the final actually, George Floyd was the domino to fall. It's the tipping point. And after this, everything that happens after, there's no holding it back. Folks like myself, spiritualists, astrologers, empaths, channelers, we've been talking about this year for a while. We've been talking about this since, I've been talking about this since my very first YouTube video when I started this YouTube channel at the beginning of this year, that this year is huge. It's 2020, it's a double turning point, it's the end of like a 700-year cycle, it's the end of an ancestral cycle of slavery, of an imbalanced, what's at the bottom of my deck? The Tower, yeah. It's the end of this imbalanced power dynamic, and I've released other videos about this, the collective shadow, just various aspects of this I've kind of been like giving bits and pieces, but what's happening right now is the tipping point. Like, George Floyd's death was the tipping point, and there's no going back now. We've started this thing officially. And this is largely, I have to say, largely due, we must give credit to the Pluto in Scorpio generation, inspired by the Pluto in Sagittarius generation. So that's millennials and Gen Z. Millennials, we were here accustomed to tower moments. Like, how many massive recessions have we lived through? One of my first pivotal memories was of 9/11. This. We're accustomed, we're not afraid of death. We're not afraid of the death cycle. That's why we're here. That's why we incarnated at this moment in time. And then, inspired by Pluto and Sagittarius, the group that inspires, wants to expand, understands that there is expansion to be had after this. So our two groups together are recreating a new world. We're done. We're done with the old world of slavery, of genocide, master, servant. We're done. We're no longer willing to keep quiet about subtle racism, white supremacy ingrained in the systems and structures that this country was built on. If you're in the US, that's where I am. But it's over. It's all over. The collective shadow is shifting. The power dynamic of the collective shadow is shifting back into the hands of the majority, the collective. And I just felt really called to come back on here after 2 weeks of activist work, going to protests and stuff. That work is important, but I think what's happening now is a lot of us folks, after that initial reaction, this week what we have is almost like a moment of silence for the past. A moment of silence for who we were as a collective, so that we can move forward into this new timeline, which is all about unity and love and uplifting others, collaboration, cohabitation, cooperation, collectivism. That's where we're headed, because more and more people are waking up, realizing that we are all connected. And that is not to say that now is not the time to say we are all one, right? Because that can be very triggering for especially Black folks right now. Because that's dismissing the individual problems that groups of us have based on other groups' perceptions of us. Like, I think it's interesting the difference between, there's even differences between folks like me who had parents who were first generation Americans versus people who have parents whose lineage is like generations old in the United States and they have old money. All these different levels of privilege, that's breaking down right now. Like, all of these levels of privilege, you know, white, cis, hetero privilege, you know, class privilege, all of these various elements are being broken down, brought to the surface so we can see them, understand them, and clear them out. So I think, like, you know, down the road it will be, we are all one, but right now that's not how we're treated. That's not how we're perceived in the 3D world. So we can't say that right now, even though it is true that we're all technically one species, but that's not how we're treated. So there's a lot being brought up. All of these old ideals, ideas, perceptions, they're all being brought to the surface and made very obvious so that we can understand it, integrate it as part of our shadow, understand it, break it down, release it, move forward, transform. You know what I mean? So yeah, I responded to that initial call to action as well. I was, you know, protesting for days. I protested for like a week straight, and then helped organize a protest, a march in the town I grew up in, and that was very healing for this town which had been pretty not divided. I would say it was more like oblivious before. Like, it wasn't like inherently, it wasn't blatant racism in this town, it was just like racial obliviousness. Like the whole, I don't see color, like we're all one people, like that kind of thing. But this march showed people that no, people have different experiences, there's multiple realities, and not everyone has been treated like how you say we're all one. So let's talk about that, and let's heal that part of this town. So that was cool, but for many of us this week, we have the Cancer new moon and eclipse on Father's Day, right after the summer solstice. And what this is, like I said, it's like a moment of silence for who we were as a collective, and we're really going to be hearing a call this week to connect with our ancestry, our ancestors as a collective, right? So I think it's going to be really important this week to get really in touch with the earth, like spend time alone and like meditate out in nature, get in touch with your ancestral earth roots, but also connect to loved ones that have passed, you know, ask them for wisdom and guidance at this time. But especially this paternal energy around Father's Day, this really brings up paternal lineage, you know, but Cancer is the mother, you know, the divine feminine also. So on both sides of the spectrum there, we need to dig into those ancestral roots and see what comes up, what trauma needs to heal. Yeah, and it's a moment of silence, but also after the initial reaction, we're having this moment of silence also to find our inner wisdom, our inner voice, and figure out how we're going to move forward into this new timeline. In what ways are we going to be contributing to the creation of this new reality in which people are treated more as one, right? Where there's more equality, more unity, more collaboration, cooperation, less separation. Because remember that separation is an illusion, but that illusion has had control for so long that we can't just say it doesn't exist, because we see the effects of it. Racism is a symptom. Racism and oppression are symptoms of the illusion of separation. But we can't just say it's not there, because people are deeply affected by it. Especially in the United States, what we're dealing with is centuries of oppression genocide, slavery, actual slavery, segregation, like the most blatant examples of the effects of the illusion of separation. We cannot dismiss it. If you're a spiritualist and you hear people say, but we're all one, or I don't see color, or, you know, it's all an illusion, like, tell them, yeah, great, that's probably true, but people are affected by this separation every day. They fear for their lives because of it. So don't dismiss their experience. That's where empathy comes in. Right? And there's a lot of us, right, where we can be like, freedom is a mentality. You know, we have to be our own leaders. You know, you can choose to just ignore the media, choose to just ignore certain things. And yeah, that gives you a certain element of control through the law of attraction. And wherever you put your focus, you grow in that reality. But still, there are people who experience violence, who experience discrimination. And you can't dismiss that experience. Listen. It's a time to listen. And this week, I really think it is a lot about ancestry, because of course we have Cancer and Father's Day. That's like mother-father energy, you know, like pretty blatant. And also on that Cancer axis is Capricorn, right? So that's the mother and the father archetype. So, or well, more like grandfather, mother and grandfather energy. So it's a time to listen. It's a time to listen to your inner voice, your inner wisdom, and higher wisdom from ancestors, ascended masters, angels, the all that is, source, Gaia, the earth. And after you feel more grounded and more solidified and feel, okay, well, this is where I can move forward. This is where I will be most aligned and where I can be of service, not servitude, but service to the collective. You move forward. And if anyone wants to tell you their experience, just listen. This week is a void week. Me personally, I booked an Airbnb campsite in the middle of frickin' nowhere in the darkest part of Michigan. I'm going there by myself to camp and just experience the void, literally just darkness and silence. And just be in that cosmic womb and allow whatever wisdom needs to come through to me, and just experience oneness with the void. So maybe you can do something like that as well. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little reading, collective reading, because there's been a lot going on this year. Oh my god, COVID and, you know, just revolution. Like, we knew that this year was going to be big, we just didn't exactly know how. So this is the most interesting time to be incarnated on Earth right now, I'll tell you that much. And you can hear my voice, it's from screaming for like 2 weeks straight. But when you hear the call, if you're a light worker, I know that you're stirring right now. Like, what am I supposed to do here? I hear the call to action. What am I supposed to do here? And for people like me who are empaths, like, I don't necessarily think it's our place to be at protests all the time. Like, it's nice to be there to cast protection on the group, but we act as sponges, so it ends up like I just ended up having a lot of body pain and feeling very emotionally unbalanced, and that's why I need this like void time, right? And that's why we all do, because it's been a heavy 2 weeks. We need like a pause, right? We need to grieve. Like, we've been collectively grieving, but you do need that moment of silence within yourself too, to just be like, okay, what's going on and where am I going from here, and just kind of recoup. Like, activist burnout is real, so just make sure that you're taking the time to do self-care in between whatever activism you're doing. On my Instagram, I posted a mindfulness, like a very grounding meditation to do in between protests or whatever activism you're doing, or just in general, just to open your channel more. And it also has an element in the end where you cast protection on protesters, cast love energy on protesters, but yeah, you can just do the first half, which is just a nice mindfulness meditation if you want. Still? All right. Well, yeah. So we're still battling this separation is coming forward full force now. Now that the tower has already fallen, we're getting into this energy full force. That's what I'm hearing. Um, the tower fell and it's bringing out our demons. Like, that's just like the easiest way to put it. Like, it's bringing out our demons, but it's also bringing out our inner angel, right? Our inner light being. Because that's the thing, is once we realize that these are all two sides of the same coin, that they're interconnected. I did a video talking about this too. They're how did I put it? They're interconnected components of the same universe, right? Light and dark, life, death. It's an interdependent dynamic. One cannot exist without the other. So after the tower has fallen, right? Those tower moments we've had, which have been like COVID, which revealed a lot of like economic issues and just systematic issues. And then the whole George Floyd thing brought up like other, like more subtle systematic issues, which I guess not subtle, but like non-physical. So systemic racism, something that it's not something you exchange like money, but it's something that affects everything on like even more subtle levels. So these tower moments happen and it's bringing out all the demons surrounding it. But also, like I said, the angels, like people are also realizing, like after this march we had in the town I grew up in, like I never thought that would happen here. And then we had some folks be like, I understand now, because we had like speakers and stuff like talking about their experiences with racism. And there was even like this 10-year-old girl who her first experience with racism was when she was 3 years old. Oh my God. We need to send love energy out to all these folks. I mean, this is centuries of trauma coming out in these folks that are fighting out and fighting back. Like, yeah. Anyway, I forgot what I was even saying because I started thinking about her. Oh yeah, so we had people be like, I understand now. Thank you for doing this march and having these speakers. I get it now. Like, they had just never listened before, and they didn't understand the experience because it wasn't theirs. And that's like white privilege 101, right? Is like, it must not be real because I don't experience it for myself, right? But that's not the case, is that there's multiple realities, and we have to listen to others and respect where they're at. Yeah. Oh, 6 of Swords, where'd that go? Yeah, you can probably tell that I need a break. I'm like so exhausted, but I still felt called to do this for you guys. Anyway, I saw the 6 of Swords and what I heard was moving away. Yeah, we're moving on. But it's also an element of returning. Returning. By returning to the pain, to the trauma, we can move on. That's how you heal. King of Pentacles and 7 of Cups coming up. So it feels like the phase we're in right now, now that all our demons are out in the air and we know that we're returning to kind of think on the past, have that moment of silence to think on the past and all of our ancestral trauma, but also the emotional, behavioral patterns that we have inherited by our families. And that can include subtle racism that we have inherited that we might not even be aware of because it just seemed so normal to us. You know what I mean? But also now we're kind of, like I said, with this moment of silence, this pause this week, we're kind of reanalyzing our values, principles, beliefs, and also what we want to choose for this reality, for ourselves and for the collective. So like we have these 7 cups here. I always think of this card like a video game, or not a video game, like a game show, and there's like 7 cups and they all have prizes in them. And it's like you can sit there all day and play the waiting game until you know exactly which one is right. And that's what it feels like, is you're just kind of like, do, 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 do. Like the waiting music is going on and you're just looking at these cups like, all right, which one am I gonna pick? Come on down and pick a cup. But with this Taurus energy, it's very much so about values, principles, beliefs, and talents. So how do we want to use our talents and our gifts to contribute to the collective? Which one are we going to choose? Which one is going to be the most fulfilling for us, but also which one will advance the collective the most? So whatever's aligned with our highest good. So this week is a period of pausing to kind of reflect, connect and heal our ancestral roots. And also, I'm also hearing roots with this, this Taurus energy too. It's almost like, yeah, that's that father energy as well coming through. Yeah, just like, what is our role going to be? Okay. And usually this represents more of like illusions, but it's not feeling like that. It's feeling like, yeah, like more like a game show, like you're waiting and just kind of looking back, analyzing everything, thinking on things, and deciding which one to choose. So you may have a lot of portals open to you right now, is something I'm also hearing. You may have a lot of options, a lot of portals, and it's becoming hard to make a decision because you don't know which one is right for you. But at the end of the day, like whatever will amplify, whichever portal will amplify you and your reality and the collective through your talents, like whatever gift comes most naturally to you is usually the answer. So what else do we have going on for the collective? Any other advice or words of wisdom for this week? Things to focus on, meditate on during the Cancer new moon. What intentions should we be setting to move forward on this new, beautiful timeline? How can we help heal the collective this week? Knight of Pentacles. So that's, yeah, Virgo, Taurus. I want one more. Yeah, it definitely feels like you'll be establishing something. But I think you're waiting for, yeah, it just feels like there's some waiting going on. Establishing a belief. Establishing a belief is what I'm hearing. That was aggressive. Queen of Cups, Cancer energy. Yeah, so this week really, I mean, it's just simple. Like, this week is simple. How we can help, how we can contribute to healing the collective and moving forward is by healing our family lineage, any ancestral trauma, because by each of us healing our individual timelines, that contributes to the healing of the collective, if that makes sense. And I feel like for many of you, like, doing some form of art or like, I'm feeling like music, like making music, painting, something where you're really integrating both your yin and yang energy, something where you're receiving while doing something, like while creating, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like that'll get you into a good place to channel. But there's also this element of solidifying a belief. A belief that you are worthy is what I'm hearing. So for some of you this week, you may be really struggling with feelings of like unworthiness, or like, what could I possibly do, is what I'm hearing. Yeah. What could I possibly do? Waiting for something to come to you, but you're like very burdened by this feeling of unworthiness, this lack of worth, this lack of, I don't know who this is for, but someone is feeling left behind, left out, like they are no longer valid. That needs to be healed. That you're waiting for your passion to come back to you, and you feel like you're not worthy of pursuing it. I think this has a lot to do with our collective trauma, like not even in this country, but in the whole world, of it being all about work, right? But there's this element here, a feeling like you can't move forward because of some sort of thought pattern that is making you feel unworthy, immobile, like you're never going to see your passion come back to you. You're never going to see your passion return. And I feel like for a lot of us, it's things that aren't necessarily deemed necessary because we live in like a capitalist world, especially in the United States. So you may feel like you don't deserve support from the universe by pursuing your passion. Like you just have to stick to the same old, but you know that's not the world anymore. You know it's not sustainable. I mean, we've seen this through COVID, that it's not sustainable. So we're being asked, what are our dreams? We need to establish a belief that we can survive just being ourselves. I just got truth bumps. We can survive being ourselves and doing our passions. That's this new paradigm, this new timeline we're moving into. It's no longer about being a slave to the monarchy. It's no longer about being a slave to capitalism. We know that this structure, the system, how it's been working is not sustainable, and we've seen that this year. We know that now. There's so many things that are unnecessary about our world. I'll be honest, including the police system, right? The police force. What do they actually do? The police force came about through slavery in this country to protect property and to watch, keep an eye out on slaves. It was a slave patrol, essentially. Look up Black Wall Street. There's so much we're learning right now about our past that is just revealing how unnecessary so many of these things are. That we don't have to stick to the way things are. We can dream up something better. So many things are so unnecessary, but we're just used to it, right? It's just the way things have been, the traditional, the conventional way. But we don't need to be like that anymore. We know that more things are possible. We just have to take the blindfold off and commit to the belief that we can ask for more. We deserve more. We're worthy of more. We're not slaves to the devil anymore. We're not slaves to the devil anymore. We were not created to just work, eat, shit, and die. I'm telling you that much. We were created as these beautiful beings that can, like, that's why I'm feeling like music and painting, like these very, like, beautiful, primal things about us as a species. We came here to learn, to experience. But somewhere along the way, the devil, which is just a representation of, you know, the illusion of separation, we allowed the devil to take hold of our reality, of our collective shadow, and it's had power for too long. And now that we're seeing that both exist at the same time, we can put our intention and our focus into the one we actually want. And what we want is freedom to simply exist without being someone's pawn, someone's... Like, think about all of the billionaires, even now with Jeff Bezos, like trillionaires, who have so much money, it's unnecessary. They could never spend that amount of money in their lifetime, and yet they have it. And their employees that they exploit in order to make that money can barely survive to take care of their families, to have health insurance. Why? Why is this the way things are and people just accept it? Because they don't believe they deserve more. They're just like, oh, this is the way it's always been. Well, no. Not for much longer. Not for much longer. Claim it. You are a cosmic, interdimensional being. Outside of this reality, you don't have color. You don't have gender. You know what I mean? You're here to have a particular experience and contribute and to move forward. Move the collective forward. You're a cosmic being. Don't let them tell you you don't deserve more. And by them, I mean this, which is manifested in politicians, policemen, whichever oppressor is present at the time. They have an interest in keeping you sedated and controlled. They have an interest in keeping you in chains because they thrive on your exploitation, but it's not going to work any longer. It's just not. All right. That's all I got for you guys. Just really take care of yourself this week. Take some time for yourself to really meditate and find peace and solidify that belief in yourself that you are worthy of more and that as a collective we are worthy of more. And let's just focus our intention there. Okay? Much love. Take care.